Hi everybody, I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps.
Today I'm going to show you how to make this super cozy double knit ear warmer with an adorable heart design. We're going to cast on with waste yarn in a provisional cast on so that we can remove the yarn later and have live stitches to work with. Now the easiest way I've found to do that is with a crocheted cast on. So I have a slip knot on my hook and I'm going to just yarn over and pull through 2 or 3 stitches so that I know that this is the end, that this is where I started from. Okay, now let's cast on 12 stitches. I'm going to place my knitting needle on top of my crocheted chain on top of the working yarn. The working yarn is at the back. I'm going to reach over the needle, grab that working yarn, and pull through a loop. Now you can see how that's wrapped the bottom of that working yarn around the needle. Now I put the working yarn behind my needle again and do it again. 2, okay? Put it behind my needle, do it again. 3, behind my needle, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, and then I'm going to just pull through one extra just so that I have that one extra space to work with. I'm going to pull through one extra and then I'm going to just pull this tail out. And I'm going to leave that kind of loose because I'm going to undo it later to remove the stitches. Now I have 12 stitches cast on with my waste yarn. I'm going to go ahead and just knit those 12 stitches to make my first row. And I like to take this tail to make it a little less floppy. I like to take the tail and drape it over my needle so that it gets tucked up in this stitch just for the second stitch when I work the knit stitch. Okay, and that keeps everything just a little less floppy and it'll lock down when I make my third one, and there we go. So now I'm just going to keep knitting all 12 of these stitches with my dark pink yarn. So that's 12. Now we're going to knit one more row just so that we have a nice base to work from here. And so that when we pick up our stitches, we have a nice base of stitches to pick up from without any increases or anything interfering with them. Okay, that's our 12 stitches. Now we're going to start our increases. Knit the first stitch. And then for the second stitch, we're going to knit front and back. So knit through the front as normal, but don't take it off your needle. And then knit through the back leg. So insert your needle through the back leg like that and knit that as well. So now we have 2 stitches made out of that one. Then we knit across to the last 2 stitches. And we're going to knit front and back again. So knit front, bring it around, go into the back and knit the back. And then knit your last stitch. So now we have 14 stitches because we did 2 increases. So we're going to knit this row and we're going to count when we do so we can double check that. So 1, don't split the yarn, 1, 2, 13, and 14. So in our next row, we're going to increase again and we're going to go from 14 to 16. So knit the first one. Then knit front and back. Okay, and then knit all the way to the last 2 stitches. Okay, on the last 2 stitches we knit front, knit back, okay, and then knit the last stitch. So now we have 16 stitches. We're going to do another even row. An even row is basically just a row where you knit all the stitches and you're not increasing or decreasing anything. So we're just going to work even is what it's called. This is a great time to count and make sure you have the right stitch count. Okay, now we've got our last increase row, so knit the first stitch and then knit front and back. And then knit all the way to the last 2 stitches. Knit front and back. Okay, and then knit the last stitch. And now we have 18 stitches. Now we're ready to bring in our second color so that we can be ready to do our double knitting. With double knitting, all the stitches are knit in pairs. For every one of these stitches, we want to now make a pair of stitches. One will be the darker color, and that'll be on one side of the fabric, and the other will be the lighter color, which will be on the opposite side of the fabric. So in order to do that, we're basically doubling our stitch count, right? So we're going to work an increase in every stitch. We're going to go ahead and work that knit front and back increase, but we're going to do it with the second knit stitch being in the lighter color. So I'm going to knit the front of the first stitch with the darker color, and leaving it on that needle. I'm going to go into the back. I'm going to drop my darker color, pick up my lighter color, and knit into the back with the lighter color. Okay? Now, just as a matter of neatness, as I change colors, I'm always going to pick up the darker color on top of the lighter color, and the lighter color underneath the darker color. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to knit in front with the darker color, drop that, pick up the lighter color from underneath. Okay, see how the darker color's on top, the lighter color's underneath, and knit the back leg with the lighter color. Okay, then I'm going to knit the front leg, and I pick up the front on top. Okay, knit the front leg with the darker color. Then I go to the back, pick up the lighter color from underneath, and knit the back leg. I'll do a couple more like that. Darker color on top, knit the front leg. Lighter color underneath, knit the back leg. I'm going to do a few more like that and then show you what that does at the back, how it makes such a neat arrangement of the yarns at the back. So you can see here we have this little ridge of basically purl bumps forming in the darker color on top of the ridge of the lighter color underneath it. It doesn't matter exactly how you do it, just whatever method you choose to do, be consistent. You can always pick up your yarns from the top or always pick them up from the bottom, or you can do, one color on top, one on the bottom. Any of those looks will look nice. Just be consistent in what you're doing and don't switch back and forth, because that's when it starts to look messy. I'm at my very last stitch. Knit the front leg with the darker color, knit the back leg with the lighter color, and throw it off. Now we have 18 pairs of stitches instead of 18 stitches. Okay? So let's flip it over and let's start double knitting. But before we start that, I want to show you the chart. This is a rough draft of the chart for the pattern. There may be slight changes to it after I get started, but I want to show you the key here. The white squares mean to knit with the background color. The dark squares mean to knit with the accent color. And I'll show you what that means as we go. The V's on the edges here, the V's mean slip stitch, but we're dealing with the stitches as pairs, right? So each of these squares is a pair. We're going to slip the last pair of stitches with both of the yarns in the same position. We're going to slip that pair together. Same thing here on the selvage stitch. We're going to knit two together through that first pair. So the edge stitches, we're treating the pairs together. We're either slipping them together or we're knitting them together. And we'll go through that as we knit the first row. This only comes in at the end, so we're not going to worry about that. That is when we are joining the colors back again. Like we just did increases to get us two colors. This will be when we do decreases to join the colors back again, and I'll show you that when we get to that point. But we're going to start way down here at the bottom of the chart. So everything in row 1 is a white box, and if you remember, the white boxes are knit with the background colors. So what do I mean by that? Well, each square is a pair of stitches, right? So you're going to be knitting one stitch and purling one stitch. You're knitting the stitch that's going to show on the front. You're purling the stitch that's going to show on the back. So when we knit this box here, you can tell this is the accent color and this is the background color, right? When we knit this box here, we want the background color to show on the side we're looking at, and we want the accent color to show on the other side. So this means we're going to knit with the background color and we're going to purl with the accent color. Which color is background and which color is accent? Well, that depends entirely on what side row you're looking at. The background color and accent color flip on the opposite sides. So that all sounds very confusing. Let's just get into row 1 and you'll see what I'm talking about, okay? So the first stitch in row 1 is a selvage stitch. For our selvage stitch, to create a nice pretty edge, what we're going to do is we're going to take this first pair of stitches and we're going to knit them together using both of our yarns together to make a nice twisted, braidy, thick selvage that looks nice, okay? Now I like, when I'm double knitting, to hold one yarn in each hand. What I tend to do, because you're going to tend to knit with the background color more often, and I like to knit continental, and I like to purl English, so I tend to hold my background color in my left hand. How do I know which color is background color for this first row? Well, the pattern says that light pink is the background color for all the odd number rows, but you can also tell because the light pink comes first. This is going to be the front, this is going to be the back, and that's always the case on this first stitch. The front color will be the first color that you see after the selvage, okay? So this is my background color and this is my accent color here. And what I'm going to do is, for this whole row, I'm knitting with my background color and purling with my accent color. So I knit with my background color, okay? Then I bring both yarns to the front. Your yarns move together, okay? Bring both yarns to the front, purl with the background color. That's going to show on the other side of the fabric. Bring both yarns to the back and purl with the accent color. Bring both yarns to the back, knit with the background color, okay? Bring both yarns to the front, purl with the accent color. I don't know if I said that right the first time. I may not have. Let's see it one more time. Both yarns to the back, knit with the background color, okay? Both yarns to the front, purl with the accent color. So this is one box right here. This knit with the background color, purl with the accent color. That is a white box. Okay, that is a knit background color box, because I'm just describing what you're doing with the knit stitch. You purl with the other color, right? So this whole row is a KBC, knit background color, which then means purl with accent color. This will become clearer as we start getting farther in the pattern and you see the two sides taking shape with the different colors. Okay, now I'm down to the very last two stitches, okay? And what does it say on the last two stitches? It says slip, right? I'm going to leave the yarns in front, both of the yarns in front. I'm going to take these two and slip them, okay? I can slip them one at a time or I can slip them together, either way, but I'm slipping purlwise and I'm slipping them onto the needle without working them. And that keeps the edge nice and neat as well, so that it doesn't get floppy with too much yarn. So that's the first row. The first row was very easy. We knit with the background color, we purled with the accent color on all the stitches. When we flip it over now, look what's happened. The knit stitches are now in the dark pink. Those are now our background color. Okay, so on this row, the dark pink is our background color. So let's start on row 2. Row 2 says we start with a selvage stitch, so let's do that. Remember, we're starting from here, right? Because that's where you see row number 2. This number next to it is because we're going to repeat these rows later. So this is row 2, but it will also be row 62. But for now, we're just worried about it being row 2. So we're just going to work row 2. Okay, so start with the selvage. That's the first stitch you see, which means you knit these two that we just slipped, right? You knit them together with both yarns. Okay, now the next stitch is a white box. And how many white boxes do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 times we are going to knit with the background color and purl with the accent color. So now our background color is dark pink. Okay, so now I'm putting dark pink in my left hand. This also helps you keep it straight. Okay, dark pink in my left hand and light pink in my right hand. Okay, so I've got 7 knit with background color. All right, so that's a knit with the background color and a purl with the accent color. That was 1. Those 2 stitches make up 1 box. Okay, let's do that again. Knit with background color, purl with the accent color. That's 2. Okay, knit with the background color, purl with the accent color. I'm going to zoom out just a little more. There we go. That's 3. And now let's count. When you count, this was the selvage stitch, right? And we don't care what order these 2 yarns end up in. If they're flipped, it's okay, because we're going to always work those 2 together. So don't worry about that. But that's 1 block. That's a selvage. Now we need 7 of these. So 1, 2, notice I'm counting in pairs, 3. Okay, we need 4 more. So knit, oops, see, here's the problem. If I didn't bring my yarn back, see where that float goes? That's a problem. So undo that knit. Okay, bring both my yarns to the back. Knit, bring both yarns to the front, purl. Both to the back, knit, both to the front, purl. I think I've got 1 more after this one, but let me stop and count. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 more to do. 1. Okay, so there is my 7 boxes of knit background color. Okay, now the next 2 boxes are knit with the accent color. So I'm switching things up now. Okay, bring both your yarns to the back, and I'm going to take the next stitch and knit it with the accent color. Notice that's changing the color here. Okay, so I knit that with the accent color, and then I purl with the background color. Okay, so now on this stitch, I'm going to have a light pink stitch on the dark pink side, and I'm going to have a dark pink stitch on the light pink side, which is how we get the design. So that was 1. Let's do another one. Knit with the accent color, purl with the background color. Okay, now I should have 7 left to do here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 before I get to that selvage again, right? So it's 7 more knit with the background colors. So knit, purl. And keep doing that, and then I'll come back to you at the end of the row. Now when we count, take a look at this, okay? Here was my selvage. Then I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pairs that have the dark pink first, right? Now I have 1, 2 pairs that have the light pink first. Those were my knit accent color pairs. Then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pairs that have the dark color first. And then I'm down to my last stitch, which is that selvage stitch, which I just slip with the yarns in front. See, it's here. The V means slip with the yarns in front. Okay, so I just slip that. And I'm ready to turn around and start the next row. And if you look here, you'll see those are our stitches of the accent color. Okay, over here you can see those. Where are they? Here. These 2 are our stitches in the accent color. You're going to see those show up on this next row. Okay, so this next row is row 3. We start from here. Start with a selvage stitch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knit background colors. Okay. Selvage stitch. Oop. Don't split the yarns. Now I'm on an odd numbered row, and I can start to tell now that my background color is the light pink, right? That's the color that's showing on the background here. So I'm going to put the light pink in my left hand, the dark pink in my right hand, And if you like to hold it differently, you can. People hold their yarns all sorts of ways for two-color color work. Whatever works for you. Okay, now I'm going to do, what did I say? 6. 6 of the knit with the background colors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Then I'm going to do 4 where I knit with the accent color first. So for the next 4 stitches, I'm going to knit with the accent color and purl with the background color. So that's 1. Knit with the accent color, purl with the background color. 2. Knit with the accent color, purl with the background color. And that was 3, so 1 more. Knit with the accent color, purl with the background color. Okay, so you can see here, see these 2 stitches? Those were the 2 from the previous row right there. And you can see that the 4 we did, there's one before those 2, then there's those 2, and then there's one after those 2, right? This is where the color changed. So right there are those 4, and that's how it goes here. There's one before we get to those 2, then there's those 2, and then there's one after. So that was those 4 of knit with the accent color. Now we go to the end of the row knitting with the background color. And I'll just do that fast because you've seen me do it. And then the last stitch, we just slip with the yarns in front. So slip both of them with the yarns in front. And go ahead and turn your work. See, there's those 2 light pink ones on the dark pink side. Okay? I'll show you one more row and then we will look at the pattern and how it continues. So start with row 4, we start with the selvage stitch. Okay? Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 knit with background colors. And what's our background color? It's the dark pink on this row. So I'm putting the light pink in my right hand, the dark pink in my left hand. Okay, that was my selvage stitch. And you can see that nice braid forming, right? So now I'm going to knit with the background color and purl with the accent color. How many times did I say? I think I said 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then I have this time, I'm on row 4. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches in the background, or in the accent color. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and then I'm going to switch back to knitting with the background color for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more stitches. So background color. So if you're seeing what's happening here, whatever color you knit with, the knit happens first and then the purl happens, right, on each of these pairs. So whatever color you knit with is coming in the front on the side that you're working on. And whatever color you purl with is going on the back layer based on the side you're working on. So you get the color work design by switching up your colors. And that's really all it is. You're just switching the order of your colors to get them to show on the opposite sides. Now I'm down to that last one. I'm going to keep my yarns in the front and I'm going to slip that last pair together. Okay, So now you're starting to see the design take shape a little bit. You can see the 2 stitches there and the 4 stitches above it. In the end, you see the 2 stitches here and then 4 stitches above it. I think I'm looking at this upside down actually. Yeah, there you go. So 2 stitches here, 4 stitches above it, then the 5 stitches that we just did, and that's how you build this design, okay? And it's pretty much just that. You work a couple stitches in the background color, then you work a couple stitches in the accent color, then you go back to the background color. On the edges, we're always going to slip at the end of the row and work that selvage stitch, which is a knit 2 together, at the beginning of the row, and that gives you this nice braided look along the edges. Okay, so that deals with our nice tight pretty edges. And you're just going to keep repeating this pattern. Just follow the chart. And work, you know, the accent colors where it tells it to you, where it tells you to on the chart. And look at the numbers on the side, because what we're going to do is we're going to work, I'm going to zoom out a little more, okay? We're going to work these 3 hearts, okay? Notice that this one is just a repeat of this one, right? So we're going to work these 3 hearts. Then we're going to work this big heart, okay? And then we're going to come back and work these 3 hearts again. So we get all the way up to row 61 up here. Zoom in, you can see the row numbers. There's row 61, and then it says here, there's a break, right? It says repeat rows 2 through 40. So you come back down here, and here's row 62. It's the same as row 2, right? So you get to 61, then you come all the way back to 62, and you start working these 3 hearts again. Okay, and you end after row 100 up here, which is the same as row 40. And then after you do that, then we get up to this edge where we're going to switch over. You're going to do one more row of just knitting the background color, and then you're going to switch into those decreases, which I will come back to when we get to that point. So I'm going to knit this whole chart, and I'm going to knit this one row of knitting the background color, and then I'll come back to you when we're ready to do the decreases. And what that will look like in the end, here's where we started, okay? Here's where we started. We're working this heart right now, so we're right here right now, all right? So we're working this heart, work this heart, and get through the big heart, right? That's the end of the chart. Then you come back and you work that set of 3 little hearts again. And that is the chart part of the pattern. And you can see it's a nice thick fabric, and on the opposite side, the background color and accent color have switched. And that is the whole point of double knitting color work. So I'll come back to you when I get to here, after I'm finished with all the double knitting. Now we're done with the lighter color, so we can go ahead and cut that and leave a tail to weave in later. We're just going to be working with the darker color now. So this entire row is going to be decreases. We're going to take each pair of 2 stitches here, the dark and the light, and we're going to work them together. We could do just knit 2 together all the way across, but instead we're going to do slip, slip, knit, and I'm going to show you why. It doesn't matter on the first stitch, because on the first stitch we don't know what order the colors are arranged. If you want to be really nice and perfect all the way across, you can set your stitches up so that the dark pink comes first and then it'll match. But if it doesn't match, it's okay, because we've got this twisted edge to go anyway, right? So for this first pair, when we slip, slip, knit, it doesn't matter the order. And you could knit 2 together on the first pair if you wanted to. The first pair is not important. But we slip the first stitch, we slip the second stitch, we insert our needle back into the 2 stitches together, and then we knit them. And that's how you do a slip, slip, knit. Now watch what that does, okay? That takes the stitch that's on the right and makes it sit on top of the stitch that was on the left. So when I knit 2 together, if I was to knit 2 together, notice that the stitch that's on the left is the one that's on top. Well, in this case, the stitch that's on the left is going to be our lighter color, and we don't want that on top. We want the darker color on top. And that's why we're going to be doing the knit 2 togethers, sorry, the slip, slip, knits all the way down the row instead of knit 2 together. So slip the first stitch, slip the second stitch, insert your needle back into both stitches, and then knit them together. And that is a slip, slip, knit. And see, now the darker pink color's on top, which means that the darker color is going to show more on this side and the lighter color is going to show more on this side. And that's what we want. So slip, slip, knit, slip, and we're slipping knitwise, right? Slip, slip, knit. It basically turns the stitches around and reorients them so that we're going into them the opposite way. It makes it lean to the left. Okay, now if you are a left-handed knitter and you're doing this, the naming of the stitches, the decreases, sometimes doesn't translate. You want to do the one, you can try them both, but you want to do the one where the dark color is on top so that the dark color is what shows on this side and the light color is what shows on the back. Whether you call that a slip, slip, knit or a knit two together actually varies. The conventions vary, and that's a whole different story, but you want to make sure that you're getting this look and not this look. Okay, do you see the difference? You don't want to see that light pink on top. So we're going to slip, slip, knit all the way across. When we get to the last two stitches, again, we don't know what order those are going to be in because we've been working them together as one. If you want to be really, I hate to use the word anal, but if you want to be really anal about it, you can reorient your stitches so that the dark color is in front. But it doesn't matter because if your edge is twisted, it's going to be twisted just like the whole rest of the edge, and that's fine. So for these last two, just slip, slip, knit in whatever arrangement they're currently facing. And so you can see that pulled the pink in front, the light pink, I don't care because that whole edge is twisted like that, so that's fine. And so there is your elimination of the lighter color, and you don't see the lighter color at all on the front, right? When we look at the back, we see that same little ridge of purl bumps in the darker color that we had here when we started the lighter color. So it matches. So our edges match and this is nice and clean. Now let's do our decreases. So we're decreasing every other row so you can keep track that the decreases are happening on the lighter color row. Okay, we're going to knit the first stitch. And now we want our decreases to lean into the center. So if we're right-handed, this decrease is going to be a slip, slip, knit. If you're left-handed and you're coming from this edge, use whatever decrease leans to the right. For right-handed people, we're doing a left-leaning decrease, which is slip, slip, knit. Okay, just the same decrease we did on the other row. Be careful not to split your yarn like that. Okay. Now we're going to knit all the way to the last 3 stitches, and doing 2 decreases in this row is going to take us down from 18 stitches to 16. I've reached the last 3 stitches. Now I'm going to do the opposite decrease. So this one is the knit 2 together, which leans to the right. If you're left-handed, you'll be over here and you'll do the left-leaning decrease. And then we knit the very last stitch. And that's our first decrease row. That gets us down from 18 stitches to 16. Turn your work and do a row of just knitting. Now we've turned again and we're going to do another decrease row. So knit the first stitch. We always want smooth edges, so we don't do the decrease right at the edges. Okay, now we're going to do the slip, slip, knit. Knit until the last 3 stitches. We're at the last 3, so knit 2 together and knit the last stitch. We're going to do one more row of knitting even and then one more row of decreases, and that will bring us down to 12 stitches. We finished decreasing now from 18 stitches to 16 to 14 and finally to 12. So now we have 12 stitches and we're just going to work even for a number of rows. This is the part where the pattern is customizable in size. You can work as few or as many even rows as you want to get the fit that you want. I've suggested the number of rows for a couple of sizes in the pattern, but don't be limited by that. If you're making it for someone else, go by that or go by the measurements, but you can really expand or subtract as many rows as you want in this section to make it fit well for you. If you do add or subtract rows, you want to make sure that you add or subtract them in pairs so that you end up on the correct side of your work for joining. So I'm going to knit a few rows and then I'll come back and show you how to join the two ends together. I finished working a total of 8 even rows for the size that I'm working on. Now the way it's written in the pattern, you're repeating a decrease row, even row, decrease row, even row, decrease row, even row. So the repeats end after the first even row and then you do 7 more. So I've done 8 total, which is those repeats plus 7 more. Now I'm ready to pick up these stitches in the back and join my 2 edges together. Notice that I've ended after what we're calling right side row. So I just finished this right side row. So now I'm turning it to the wrong side and I'm ready to pick up these stitches in the back. When I pick them up, I want to make sure I pick them up this way and not this way. So you don't want the needles, let me get that twist out, there you go. You don't want the needles going in opposite directions. You want the needles going in the same direction. Now, if that means that you pick up your stitches on a separate needle and then transfer them, that's fine. But the way that we've done this bind off, you should be, or this cast on, you should be able to just unzip it and pick up the stitches in the correct direction. So let's give that a try. This was my last stitch on that cast on, the one that I did an extra stitch. So I'm just going to pull that out just to open up the cast on, okay? Now very gently and carefully, I like to hold my yarn like this to tension it well. Very gently and carefully, I'm going to pick up the next stitch that this next gray stitch is coming out of and pull out the gray stitch. Make sure that this is seated right. See how it's twisted? I don't want that, so I'm going to come back in that way and make it nice and straight. Okay, this one is, okay, this is that tail. Remember that when we started that first row, we crossed the tail over to kind of lock it into the stitch? That's why that tail is going through that stitch. So you can ignore that. And that stitch is seated properly. Okay. There we go. And just one by one, I'm picking up these stitches out from under the cast on, okay? And then I am pulling out that cast on, just like that. And it just unzips. So if you can't find the stitch, because it's not down here, right? It's in there. If you can't find the stitch, grab the loop and your tail yarn here, okay? And pull up on both. And now that stitch appears. Do you see that? Right there. Put that on the hook or on the needle and pull out the cast on. Okay, there is that last stitch. And I pull this out one more time and the rest of the tail comes out. Now notice that I have only 11 stitches here, not 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Why is that? Well, that is because I'm actually picking up the spaces between the stitches. So if this is one stitch, right? It comes around like that, and this is another stitch here. I'm picking up that loop between the stitches. So looking at this side where it's less tight, the loop that I'm actually picking up is this one between the stitches. So there's going to be 11 and not 12. I'm going to ease the tension a little bit through these stitches so they're not awfully tight. I want to make sure I still leave enough of a tail to sew in because my tail's a little bit short. So I'm just pulling up a little bit on that tail, and then I'm going to kind of move that extra tension through these stitches like that. And now my stitches are a little bit looser and easier to work with. So I've eliminated that tension issue that I had. Now that I've picked up my stitches, notice that the needles are pointed in the same direction. Very important because we're going to start from these stitches here and work our way across. And my headband is not twisted. If there was a twist, that twist would stay in after I seamed it. We're going to fold our work with the right sides together. Now, obviously this headband has no right side or wrong side because it's reversible. I've just said right side in the pattern. I arbitrarily picked row 1 to be the right side, just so that I could describe the sides without saying light pink side and dark pink side, because you might be using different colors. So the right sides are together. And the reason this is important, and the part of this that actually matters, is you want to see the purl bumps on. First of all, you want the needle that has the 12 stitches, not the 11. You want that to be in front because we're going to start on this needle, okay? You want to see the purl bumps right up against the needle, okay? You don't want to see how this has the knit stitches right up against the needle? You don't want to see that. You want to see the purl bumps right up against the needle. And then on this side, the side you're looking at, you want to see the purl bumps right against the needle. If you look at the right side, or sorry, the wrong side of the fabric, you'll see the knit stitches on the back here. Okay, let me zoom in so you can see that a little better because these stitches were tight. There, do you see the V's? How those are right up against the needle under there? So no, that's not what we want. The side that we're looking at on both needles should have the purl bumps right up against the needle. Kitchener stitch on garter stitch is a little different than on stockinette. We're going to be treating both needles exactly the same way. So let's get started with that. I have cut my tail to be approximately 4 times the length of the seam that I'm doing. They say 3, I like to give myself a little extra, so I do 4. Sometimes I even do more, but this time I didn't. Okay, so I'm putting that onto my needle, and now let's get started. Now, it is awkward to work into the same stitch that your tail's coming out of as your first stitch. So before we get started, I'm going to anchor this. I'm going to anchor this under the needle here, okay? I'm going to anchor it to the side here, right next to that first stitch on the back, just to have it coming out of a different spot than the stitch that I'm going to work into first. So I just find one loop there and I'm just anchoring this. And the only reason I need to do this is because I'm working with the tail. If I was working with a separate piece of yarn for the seam, then I wouldn't need to do that because it would be anchored wherever I sewed it in, right? Start by going into the front stitch as if to purl and leave it on the needle. Okay, now remember I said we're treating the back the same way, so go into the back stitch as if to purl and leave that on the needle. Okay, bring this yarn back around the tip. You don't want to wrap anything around your needle. Okay, and we're going to now go into this front stitch as if to knit. Now this starts the repeat, which is knit, purl, knit, purl. With stockinette grafting, it goes knit, purl, purl, knit, but with garter, it goes knit, purl, knit, purl. Knit, throw it off the needle, purl, leave it on the needle. Knit and throw it off the needle, purl, leave it on the needle. Make sure your yarn is never crossing over the top of the needle like that, otherwise you'll add a stitch. Okay. Knit, purl, knit, purl. And what we're actually doing is we're working a row of garter stitch between the 2 rows that we have at the end here. Oh, see how that's crossing over the needle? That's what I don't want. So bring it in front, knit, purl, knit, purl. I'm getting close to the end, and remember we had 1 more stitch on the front than we did on the back. This is why it's important that we started with the front, so that we don't end up with a pair of extra stitches, you know? So I go into knit, throw it off the needle, go into purl, leave it on the needle, knit, purl, and I'm leaving that on the needle, okay? And then knit, purl. So this way I start with the front and I end in the front. All right, now I just have the 2 stitches left on the needle. I've already worked into each of these once, right, as though to purl. So now I'm going to work into them as though to knit. So I start with the back one because I'm already coming out of this one. So I go into this one as though to knit and take it off the needle. And then I go into this one, which fell off, there we go. Go into this one as if to knit and take that off the needle. And that is your Kitchener stitch seam for garter stitch. And if you look, it looks good on both sides. So now we're going to just weave in our tails, and we make sure when we weave in our tails that we do duplicate stitch because we want both sides to look good, right? So I'm going to bring it out over here just to seal that end up really nicely. And then let's move to a different section. I'm slowly going under these loops to get away from this edge. So I'll go under that loop, and then I'll go under this loop. So now I'm here, and I'm going to start following the path of this yarn. So it goes up through here, down and around and back through here. Okay, then it goes up through here, around, and back through here. I'm actually covering 2 rows here, but that's okay. That's what happens with garter stitch. Okay, so now that's woven in a little bit. I might go 1 more stitch. I might go up a row or go backwards just to make it move in a different direction for a little ways. But I don't want to do too much because I don't want to make it super bulky. So I'll just do 1 stitch here and then call that done. And then I'm going to fasten that off. Oops. There we go. So I'll cut that, and then I'll weave in this end. This end's really short, so I'm probably going to weave it in using a crochet hook. So I will come down here because this area is not as bulky, and I will just stick my crochet hook in and pull the end through everywhere where I want it to go. Let's go here, pull it through, here, pull it through. And I'll keep doing that until I run out of tail. I won't cut it any further because it's already kind of short. So I'll just keep going around like this. And there we go. I've already woven in my other ends, and so now my headband, my ear warmer, is complete. And that's how you make the Sweethearts Double Knit Ear Warmer. If you enjoyed this pattern, please give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, or leave me a comment. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great videos. Thanks for watching.